Zina was only 7 when her mother died and left her in the care of Madame Niara, her stepfather's new wife. Niara treated Zina not as a child, but as an unpaid servant. She scrubbed the floors, cooked meals she never got to taste, and fetched water until her fingers blistered. While her stepsister Kira wore fine beads and danced in the village square, Zina wore old wrappers and carried firewood on her head. At night, Zina slept on a worn mat in the dusty storage hut behind the compound. She would cry quietly into her arms, but even her tears were stolen by the dry winds. Niara made sure that no one in the village ever saw Zina's true nature. She told neighbors that Zina was cursed, that her birth brought death, and that she must never attend ceremonies or festivals. When village children asked about Zina, they were told to stay away. Despite all this, Zina's spirit remained gentle. She hummed lullabies to herself while grinding millet and whispered prayers over the herbs she picked. Her only joy came from the visits to the herbalist who lived by the forest edge. The old woman, Mama Binta, saw through the lies and took Zina under her wing. In secret, she taught her how to use roots to heal fevers, how to mix oils that soothed wounds, and most importantly, how to tell stories that gave strength. Zina would sit under the moon and practice telling tales to the wind. Her favorite was one about a girl who grew in darkness but bloomed brighter than any garden. She didn't know she was talking about herself. One day, while Zina was washing Kira's clothes by the river, she saw a bird with a broken wing. She wrapped it gently in a cloth and sang to it. What she didn't see was a stranger watching her from the trees, a young man with kind eyes and a secret crown hidden in his satchel. And just like that, the wind of change began to stir. Prince Malek was no ordinary royal. While others in the palace basked in jewels and power, he found little joy in titles or thrones. His father, the aging king, had long told him that the crown is heaviest when worn by a heart without wisdom. Malek took those words to heart, and so, on the eve of his 25th birthday, the day he was expected to announce his bride, he made a bold decision. He shed his silks for a simple robe, tucked his identity beneath a worn cap, and slipped out of the palace before dawn. He travelled far and wide under the name Tariq, living as the people did, eating from roadside stalls, sleeping under open skies, and working for his meals. In one village, he helped a blind man find his way to the well. In another, he carried baskets for an old widow who couldn't walk well. Wherever he went, he listened more than he spoke. He collected stories, folk songs, and rumours like treasures. But it was in a small hill village near the edge of the forest that he heard something truly unusual. An old weaver woman with cloudy eyes and fingers like tree roots told him, "There's a girl in the next village. They say she lives like a ghost, hidden away by her own blood, but even the moon envies her light." Tariq paused mid-sip of his palm wine. He asked for more, but the woman only smiled. "Ask the wind," she said. "It carries her sorrow." His curiosity was caught like a leaf in the current. He changed his course that very evening and followed the direction the old woman gave, toward the village of Kuradan, nestled beside a wide river and guarded by thick bamboo groves. He arrived at dusk, posing as a wandering herbalist's apprentice. The village looked ordinary. Children playing, women grinding grain, men sharing jokes under mango trees. But something felt off. When he asked about the girl with the moonlight spirit, most people looked away or lowered their voices. "Madame Nayara's stepchild," one boy whispered. "They say she's cursed. She brings bad luck." But a little girl tugged at Tariq's sleeve and pointed toward the forest. "She sings to the trees," the child said simply. That night, he wandered close to the edge of the forest near the riverbank, and there, beneath a pale moon, he heard it, a voice, Not loud, not strong, but clear like wind over water. It sang a song he didn't know, in a language that felt older than time. He hid behind a tree and watched. A girl in a faded wrapper knelt by the river, washing clothes with quiet grace. Her hair was tied in a simple scarf, her hands moved with purpose, and her eyes, though tired, held something ancient. She hummed as she worked, pausing only to adjust a leaf bandage on a bird's wing. He didn't dare speak. Something told him this moment wasn't his to interrupt. Instead, he turned away quietly and whispered to the night sky, "She's the one." But he also knew that the path to her would not be easy. For a flower that grows in shadows learns to fear the sun. He would need patience, truth, and perhaps a little magic. Word of the mysterious traveller spread like wildfire through the village. Women whispered behind clay pots, young girls braided their hair tighter, and mothers polished every bead and wrapper in the house. Though no one had seen him clearly, the rumours were irresistible. A nobleman in disguise, wandering villages to find a bride, not for her wealth or looks, but for her soul. Madame Niara's ears perked immediately. Her heart raced, not with excitement but ambition. She had long believed that her daughter Kira was destined for royalty. Though Kira barely knew how to cook porridge or greet elders respectfully, she was beautiful and confident. And Niara believed that was enough. "Get the gold necklace," Niara commanded, "and the red wrapper from the chest. Tonight we host a gathering." "But what's the occasion, Mama?" Kira asked lazily, painting her nails with red juice from hibiscus petals. Niara's eyes glinted. "The occasion," she said slowly, "is fate knocking on our door." That evening, the compound was transformed. Mats were laid out, calabashes filled with honeyed millet drinks, roasted yams and okra stew. Drummers played, lanterns were lit, and villagers were invited. Not out of generosity, but to spread word quickly that something grand was happening at Madame Niara's house. Zina watched it all from a distance, her hands damp from scrubbing cassava. When she stepped forward to ask if she could help with the cooking, Niara narrowed her eyes. "You?" she scoffed. "You'll stay out of sight. Your face alone could ruin the whole night." Zina quietly returned to the yard, but before she could get far, Niara called the guard boy. "Lock her in the goat shed until morning. I don't want her sniffing around when the guest arrives." Zina pleaded, but no one listened. The door slammed shut. The air inside smelled of straw and animals. She curled into a corner and wrapped her arms around her knees. Time passed in silence until she heard a soft knock at the back wall of the shed. A hole in the wooden plank opened, and a wrinkled hand passed through a small pouch. It was Mama Binta. "I know where you are, child," the herbalist whispered, "and I know what's happening." Zina opened the pouch and found a small pendant, carved from white river stone, tied with braided grass, and etched with a swirling symbol. "It's for the one with true light," Binta said. "It glows only when it's near a soul of kindness. Wear it under your wrapper. No one must see it until the time is right." Zina clutched it tightly. The warmth of it pulsed like a heartbeat. Outside, the music swelled. Kira laughed loud and long, circling the fire pit in her shimmering red wrap. The disguised prince had arrived, invited and led by Niara herself. He smiled politely but kept scanning the crowd. "She's not here," he murmured to himself. And as the drums played louder, Zina sat in the dark, unaware that her stepmother's grand trap would only lead fate closer to the girl they tried to erase. The morning after the celebration, while Niara and Kira slept in after their failed attempts to impress the prince, Zina quietly unlocked the goat shed door. The village guard had forgotten to fasten it properly, with no one awake to stop her. she slipped into the forest, clutching her herb basket and the pouch Mama Binta had given her. The forest had always been Zina's escape. Here, the trees listened. The birds didn't judge. The air didn't whisper curses. She knelt beside the stream and began picking herbs, leaves for fever, bark for swelling, roots for pain. As she reached for a wild ginger plant, she heard a low groan nearby. Cautiously, she followed the sound and found a man lying against a tree, his foot twisted unnaturally. His clothes were dusty, but something in his posture didn't match a typical traveler. Still, Zina didn't hesitate. She rushed to him. "Are you hurt badly?" she asked gently. He looked up, startled to see her. For a second, he forgot the pain. She had eyes like the river, clear and deep, yet holding something unspoken. I fell while taking the ridge path," he said, trying to sit up. Zina pulled a long scarf from her waist and quickly supported his ankle. "Don't move," she said. "This root will numb the pain." Prince Malik watched her work, swift, careful, quiet. She didn't ask who he was or demand anything in return. Instead, she hummed softly, an old lullaby he faintly remembered hearing as a child. Her voice was steady, like a story passed from generation to generation. She reached into her pouch for a salve, and unknowingly, the pendant fell out, landing softly on the moss between them. She didn't notice, but Malik did. He picked it up carefully. It felt warm in his hand, almost alive. The engraving caught the light, a swirl within a circle, simple yet powerful. Zina wrapped his ankle and handed him a small flatbread from her satchel. "Eat slowly. The herbs in the paste will help the swelling." "Who are you?" he asked, more out of wonder than curiosity. "No one special," she replied. "Just someone who knows a bit about leaves and how to listen to them." Before he could say more, she stood. "I must go before they notice I'm gone." "But wait, at least tell me your name." She hesitated, then smiled. "Zina." Then, like a breath of wind, she disappeared into the trees. Malik tried to rise, but pain held him down. He looked at the pendant in his hand, now glowing faintly with warmth. He slipped it into his pocket. Back in the village, Zina said nothing about the meeting. She tucked her memories away, like folded letters in a box. She didn't even realize the pendant was missing. But for Malik, the girl from the forest became the heartbeat of his journey. He had met many women, loud, lovely, elegant, but none who walked away without looking back, leaving behind a song and a piece of her soul in his hand. And from that day on, the name Zina echoed in his mind like a sacred rhythm, one he was determined to follow, no matter where it led. Days passed, but Zina could not forget the traveller in the forest. She hoped he had made it home safely, though she doubted she'd ever see him again. Meanwhile, life in Madame Niara's compound returned to its usual cruelty. Kira complained of bruises from dancing, Niara barked orders, and Zina resumed her quiet chores like a ghost blending into walls. Then one morning, the village bell rang 3 times, an unusual signal. A town crier stood in the square, holding a royal scroll sealed with the king's crest. Villagers gathered in a hush. The crier unrolled the parchment and read aloud. "By command of His Royal Highness Prince Malik, all eligible maidens are invited to a royal gathering at the palace grounds. The prince shall identify his chosen bride not by title or appearance, but by a pendant lost and meant to return to its rightful bearer." Zina's heart stopped. A pendant? Her hands flew to her pouch, but when she reached in, it was gone. Niara, who had slithered into the crowd with Kira beside her, turned sharply to glance at Zina. A cold smirk spread across her face. That night, as Zina laid out herbs to dry, Niara burst into her room without warning. She grabbed Zina by the wrist and flung her against the wall. "Where is it?" Niara hissed. "Where's what?" "That little trinket. The one the traveller gave you. Don't play dumb. I saw you with it." Zina tried to pull away, but Kira appeared behind her, holding the pendant. "Found it," she said proudly. Niara snatched it and examined it with greedy eyes. "So this is what he's looking for. No wonder he wasn't impressed with our feast. It wasn't Kira's beauty he wanted. It was this." Zina lunged for it, but Niara shoved her hard. "You won't ruin this for us. Tomorrow we go to the palace, and Kira will wear the pendant." "But it's not hers," Zina cried. "It's mine. You are nothing," Niara snapped, "and tonight you'll stay locked until we return as royalty." Before Zina could scream, the guard was called. She was dragged to the storage hut and locked inside once more. She pounded the wooden walls until her hands ached. Tears spilled freely. It wasn't just the pendant they had stolen, it was her chance, her truth. As the sun rose and the village stirred for the journey to the palace, Mama Binta arrived quietly at the edge of the compound. With a curved twig and a whispered chant, she released the latch to Zina's prison. The old woman helped her to her feet, handed her a small bundle of herbs, and looked her in the eye. "They took what wasn't theirs," she said, "but the truth follows light. Go now. You may not have the pendant, but you have the story behind it, and that's what he's really seeking." Zina, barefoot and trembling, ran. The road to the palace was crowded with carts, dancers, singers, and hopeful brides. But Zina stayed to the shadows, slipping through side paths and woods, heart pounding like a drum. At the gates of the palace, she stood in silence, watching guests pour in under silken arches. Inside, Prince Malik sat on a golden chair beside the Queen Mother, his eyes scanning the room, not for beauty, but for the light that once sang to him in the forest. And somewhere outside, the real keeper of that light prepared to step into her fate. The palace glimmered with gold and song. Hundreds of maidens from across the kingdom filled the courtyard, dressed in dazzling fabrics and fine jewels. Laughter echoed beneath towering pillars, and the scent of roasted honey yam filled the air. But Prince Malik's gaze remained distant. He politely smiled, nodded at greetings, but his heart was searching. By his side stood the Queen Mother, observant and calm. "You'll know her," she whispered, "not by her steps, but by her soul." Kira entered, clothed in deep crimson silk and dripping in borrowed beauty. Niara walked just behind, holding her head high as though the crown already sat on Kira's head. Whispers followed them. When Kira approached the prince, she curtsied with exaggerated flair and presented the pendant on her palm. Malik's eyes narrowed slightly. "You say this belongs to you?" he asked. Kira nodded eagerly. "Yes, Your Highness. I found it by the river. I wear it often while helping the poor." He studied her. "Do you know what the symbol means?" Kira blinked. "Symbol?" He pointed to the engraving, the delicate swirl carved into the stone. "Oh, that," she said, fumbling. "It's, a royal mark perhaps, or a flower. It just looked pretty." Malik's lips tightened. He handed the pendant back. "Thank you." Kira looked confused but bowed and stepped aside. Niara gritted her teeth, her knuckles white with fury. Just as the prince began to rise, a quiet hush fell over the hall. Zina had entered, unnoticed at first. Her dress was plain, her feet dusty, her hair loosely tied with a forest vine. But there was something about her stillness, like the calm before rain. The Queen Mother tilted her head. "That one," she said softly. Malik turned, and their eyes met. Zina didn't bow. She simply walked forward, each step quiet but certain. She stood before him, not as a beggar, not as a bride, just as herself. "I believe you're looking for this," she said, pulling the pouch Mama Binta had once given her. Or maybe for the story that comes with it. Malik held up the pendant Kira had worn. You know it? Zina nodded. It's carved with a proverb. True light can hide, but never fades. It's from the old forest tongues. My teacher taught it to me when I was a child. She looked at the Queen Mother. It means the soul's truth will always find its way home. As she reached to touch the pendant, it glowed, softly, steadily, as if sighing with relief. The entire hall gasped. Malik rose slowly, staring into her eyes. You're the one from the forest. Zina's own eyes glistened. And you were the man with the broken ankle and a heart too kind to ask for more. A beat passed, then another, and in that silence, something ancient and unseen passed between them. The Queen Mother smiled. The stone remembers its fire. Niara pushed forward, shouting, She's lying. She stole it from my daughter. She's a cursed orphan. But Malik raised his hand. The pendant chose. Her words proved it. No more lies will cloud this palace. Guards stepped forward, placing themselves between Niara and the prince. Kira, pale and humiliated, turned away in tears. Malik stepped closer to Zina. I searched the kingdom for a light that wasn't loud, but real, and I found it in the shadows. Zina breathed in deeply, no longer afraid. She had been hidden, silenced, and betrayed. But now, truth had found its voice. The palace guards closed in around Madame Niara and Kira, as murmurs rippled through the grand hall. Niara's face flushed red, not with shame, but with fury. She shoved past the guards and marched toward the royal dais, pointing a trembling finger at Zina. She's a liar, a fraud. That pendant belonged to my daughter. She stole it, just like she's trying to steal this prince from us. Malik didn't flinch. And yet, she knew the words carved in it. Words your daughter couldn't even recognize. Niara's voice cracked. She's a witch. Her mother was one too. That girl has always been cursed. Ask anyone from our village. Before Malik could reply, a new voice rose from the back of the hall. I will speak, said Mama Binta, stepping forward with the help of a carved walking stick. Her presence silenced the crowd. I've known Zina since her mother passed. I taught her healing, kindness, and the language of the earth. That pendant was a gift from me, meant for the one with a true spirit. I gave it to Zina because she had nothing but love in her heart, even while she was being treated worse than a goat. She turned to Niara. You kept her in filth. You told the village she was cursed so they'd never help her. You starved her, locked her away. But the earth sees, and so does the sky. Several villagers who had travelled to the ball stepped forward in agreement. One woman said, I remember when Zina fixed my child's fever with forest herbs, while Kira laughed and poured palm oil on herself. A man added, I once saw Niara slap Zina for picking mangoes. Mangoes from her own father's tree. The Queen Mother rose. It seems the truth has finally arrived, though dragged through mud. The village elder, who had been sitting in witness to the gathering, stood slowly. He addressed the court with a voice like rolling thunder. Madame Niara and Kira, by the authority of the crown and in witness of your cruelty, lies, and attempted deceit, I hereby declare you both banished from the kingdom of Wajira. You are to leave by sunrise and never return. Kira burst into tears, falling to her knees. Please, I didn't know. I just did what Mama told me. I didn't mean... Zina stepped forward quietly. Her voice was soft but steady. I don't wish for revenge, she said. Only truth and freedom. She looked at Kira and Niara, then said, A heart full of thorns never grew roses, but I pray one day you'll try planting something different. Niara scoffed, but her posture wilted as the guards led her and Kira away. Zina didn't watch them go. Instead, she turned to the crowd, to the prince, to the stars beyond the tall windows of the palace. The darkness had finally lifted, and the girl they tried to bury had begun to bloom. The wedding was unlike any the kingdom had seen. It wasn't grand because of the gold or silk, though there was beauty in abundance. It was grand because of the spirit it carried. Zina and Malek were wed beneath the open sky, in a sacred clearing where the forest met the palace grounds. Sunlight filtered through the trees like blessings from the ancestors, and wildflowers lined the paths walked by queens before her. The villagers came, not out of duty, but joy. Even those who had once believed Niara's lies stood in awe as Zina walked toward the prince, not with polished jewels, but with braided herbs in her hair and bare feet that had walked through pain to reach grace. Malek took her hand and declared, "You were never lost. You were simply waiting to be seen." Zina smiled, her eyes shining not with pride, but peace. Following their union, Zina did not become a typical queen. She declined the lavish throne room and instead chose to live part of her time near the forest's edge. There, she and Mama Binta, now honored as the elder herbalist, founded a sanctuary. It was built with clay, stone, and love, and its gates bore an inscription that read, "The House of the Hidden Flower." It welcomed girls who had been discarded, silenced, or broken by the world. Orphans, runaways, and even those who simply needed a place to remember who they were. There were no questions about the past, only lessons, laughter, and healing. Zina taught them how to make salves from leaves, how to read the whispers of fire, and how to speak with honesty. Malik often visited, sitting with the girls and sharing stories from his travels before the crown. Together they reigned, not over subjects, but over the hearts of those who once believed they were invisible. Years later, on a quiet evening filled with cricket songs and fireflies, Zina sat under the old storytelling tree. A young girl with wide, sad eyes sat beside her, clutching a scarf too big for her shoulders. Zina handed her a warm mug of ginger tea. "Would you like to hear a story?" she asked gently. The girl nodded. Zina leaned back, the breeze playing with her head wrap. Once there was a girl who was called a curse. She was hidden, beaten down, and told she'd never be anything more than someone's shadow. But she loved anyway. She listened to trees. She healed birds. She hummed lullabies into silence. And then she paused and smiled. A prince heard her song, not because she shouted, but because her kindness echoed louder than any scream. The girl's eyes blinked slowly. What happened to her? Zina looked into the glowing dusk and said, "My stepmother buried me in darkness, but the prince followed the glow I didn't know I had." The child leaned into her side, heart soothed by the truth. That night, as lanterns lit the garden and laughter floated into the stars, the once-forgotten girl, now a queen, a healer, a light, walked the paths she had carved through pain and laid petals for those who would walk them next. Because some crowns are not worn on the head, but in the soul.